how about we get started? Well, thank you so much for joining our HDR Internships workshop this morning. My name is Susan Schlinker, and I'm one of the HDR Partnership Officers within the Graduate Research Education and Development, or GRED team. And I'm really thrilled to be joined today. We have got a special guest speaker, Mo Faramagian, who is joining us after having just completed his internship with the BMW Design Academy. So we'll be hearing from Mo a little bit later in the session about his HDR internship experience. And thanks so much for being here, Mo. We really appreciate your time. And we're also joined by the fabulous Ivy Chen, who is the Graduate Research Education Development Admin Support Officer. So throughout the session, you'll see Ivy will very kindly be putting links into the chat for you, and you can copy and paste these into a document, and then I'll be following up later this afternoon with the PowerPoint slides, and all of the links will be in there for you as well. So we've got lots of resources available for you. Before we get started, a little bit of Zoom housekeeping. I'm sure we're all Zoom experts now after the last 2 years, but it would be great if you could keep your camera and your mic turned off throughout the workshop, and we'll have a designated Q&A session at the end of the workshop where you can ask all of the questions that you would like to myself and also to Mo. But please feel free to use the chat tool throughout, and if I have time, I can answer your questions as we go through, and if not, I will consult with the chat at the end and answer your questions there. And then also just know that this session will be recorded as well. We'll be sharing it with students who are interested in HDR internships, so your choice if you would like to have your camera on and off for the session. And I would also really like to warmly acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands where we're meeting today, to acknowledge the Turrbal and the Yagara as the First Nations owners of the lands where QT now stands, paying respect to their elders, laws, customs, and creation spirits, recognizing that these lands have always been places of teaching, research, and learning. And QT acknowledges the important role the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people play within the QT community. And also, I would like to extend my acknowledgement. If you're zooming in from somewhere other than Brisbane or Meanjin, I would actually really like to extend my acknowledgement to the traditional owners of the land that you're zooming in from today. And it would be great if you are somewhere other than Brisbane or Meanjin, it would be great if you could pop that into the chat now so that we can recognize the country that you're coming from. Okay, so HDR internships, what are we going to cover today? I will be going through the benefits of HDR internships, what a HDR internship is and how to secure one. We're going to hear from Mo about his HDR internship experience and what's involved in a HDR internship. I'd like to give you an end-to-end overview of the process that you can expect. And then I'm going to take you through some preparation tips for a successful HDR internship application and also for interview. And this has been based on past experience of student applications and interviews previously. And then I'll cover the training and support that's available, and then we'll have designated time at the end for questions. But as I mentioned, you're very welcome to pop questions into the chat as we go through. Before we get into the content, I would really like you to think about these points on the screen and to start with the end in mind. Set yourself a little goal of something that you would like to walk away from. So 11:30, when you click off Zoom and you turn your kettle on to make a cup of coffee, what is the one thing that you would like to get out of this session that you would like to walk away from today's session with? And maybe just jot it down or pop it into the chat, and then I know, and then I can tailor the workshop to meet your requirements as well. So if you've not heard about the Graduate Research Education and Development team, a very big hearty hello and welcome to you. We are a team that's central to the whole university, and we have optional training and development programs that support students in 20 skill sets through the advance, lead and engage pathways that you can see in the pie chart here. So the industry engagement section of the pie is the teal colored or green colored section. And overall, GRED is looking at helping HDRs complete their thesis and also equip HDRs for life after their degree. So myself and my colleagues Simon and Catherine, we sit more on the equipping HDRs for life after their degree, because industry engagement opportunities are so crucial, and we'll go through this to being able to get you valuable industry engagement skills that are very important, irrespective of whether you intend to move on and work in academia or in industry after graduation. And I'll go into more of that later. To start with, I would love to give you just a really quick snippet of what a HDR internship could look like. And we've got a video here from PhD candidate Sarah Dillon, who completed her internship last year with the Centre for Digital Economy. So I'll play that now for you.
I'm Sarah Dillon, and my PhD research looks at international entrepreneurs and their emotions, and how the ways that they manage their emotions affects their decision making. And this is important because we know a lot of small businesses fail, and if we can help entrepreneurs make better decisions, we can help fewer businesses fail. So the internship was with QUT's Centre for the Digital Economy, and the project was sort of commercial consultancy type project for a government agency. And we were tasked with trying to understand how different stakeholders in Queensland dealt with and engaged with the digital economy. We had to speak to not-for-profits, community groups, volunteer-based organizations, businesses, big ones, small ones, manufacturing services, and really gain an understanding of how they were engaging with the digital economy and what they needed from the digital economy. There were 3 main reports. One of them sort of addressed some of the questions that we had been asked to look at directly, and I suppose was a lot more strategic. Another report looked at just some of the general feedback and concerns and trends that we could see emerging in the space based on our analysis of what other digital economies around the world were doing. And then there was another piece that looked at, more broadly, how do communities, how do people, how does society engage with government and with government guidance and regulations and the different tools that we have to help people. Part of what we really were tasked with was running these workshops that were co-designed with the government partner. And that way, part of our role really was to help the partner gain that taste themselves directly from these different stakeholder groups, so that our reports weren't just PDFs. We'd really helped the partner understand what was going on as a whole. I think professionally, I've definitely got a better understanding of where my PhD and the skills that I've acquired during the PhD, where that fits in the bigger picture of industry. But also more broadly, how research can inform business, how research can inform society, how research can really make a difference and, move some of the levers and make change in the ways that, we often want to see. Here I was, on the one hand, you're in sell yourself mode, when you do an interview. And then on the other hand, you're like, well, now I've got to do what I've just, said I can do. And matching up your behaviors and what you're delivering with what you've said you can, it can be a little bit intimidating. But then when you can do that, it feels incredible. Like, you really realize that what the PhD gives you, it's not just the piece of paper, it's so much more. And I think in that way, personally, it's helped me become the professional I wanted to become and the human I wanted to become by doing the PhD. And I don't think I would have seen that quite as tangibly if I hadn't done the internship. Having been through the whole internship process, I can wholeheartedly recommend other PhD students give this a go. Initially, I wasn't sure about doing an internship because I come to my PhD with a number of years of industry experience already. It sort of unlocked understanding that allowed me to make more of my PhD somehow. I would definitely recommend PhD students get in there and, have a look and make an internship for yourself happen. I'm Sarah.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that video. And I think Sarah makes such a great point when she says that she had come to her PhD with a number of years of industry experience already. And what value could the internship give her when she already had that experience? And I was actually at the Center for Data Science recently, and they had an industry engagement panel and quite a number of organizations there on the panel. And one question was actually really interesting, which was the industry partner said, it's what we want to know when we're interviewing people is that PhD or HDR graduates can actually apply their research skill set that they've just spent 1.5 to 4 years developing in the real world. And we don't really have evidence for that unless they undertake an internship. And so I think that that's really, if you're in that position where you've come into your MPhil or your PhD with some industry experience already, and you might be thinking, I'm not sure if an internship is for me. I think that's something very important to keep in mind. The internship is a way that you can then evidence how you can apply your research skill set in the real world. And then you can take that evidence into future job applications and interviews, and it will be really helpful for career opportunities post-graduation. So let's start with the basics of what is industry. And, once or twice as I've been in this role, I've had students say, well, I don't want to work in manufacturing, so why would I do an industry internship? So let's cover off that industry is not just manufacturing, but it actually refers to any potential end user of research, including but not limited to businesses, governments, government business enterprises, non-government organizations, not-for-profit groups, and community organizations. And so I'd just like to put a little micro pause in here and encourage you to think about whether there is any industry type, say, for instance, a government organization that you're hoping to gain experience with during your degree. And feel free to pop it in the chat, because I would love to know how I can help you with that. I'm just going to take a quick look at the chat here. Yes, okay, great. And moving on. And then why a HDR internship? And I think Sarah's video is a really great example of the value that a HDR internship can have. And as I mentioned before, HDR internships are really important irrespective of your intended career path, whether you're hoping to move into academia or into industry after graduation. And the HDR internships, what we've seen is that they can really help develop research articulation skills, industry experience and skills, research impact metrics, practical application of your skills in the real world. And remember, that's what the industry employers were saying was absolutely crucial. Evidence of your skills in the real world for your CV, and such an important opportunity to broaden or deepen your network of connections. And industry engagement will definitely help you expand and diversify your potential career options after graduation. So again, let's put another little micro pause in right here. And I'd love for you to also think about what sectors could your research skills be used in to work in after graduation. So you're in your niche discipline at the moment, but it would be great for you to also consider any transdisciplinary or interdisciplinary sectoral environments that you could potentially use and apply your research skill set in after graduation, and jot a couple of those down for yourself, or again, feel free to pop them into the chat. So building off why a HDR internship is so important, and this stat, 60% of PhD graduates will find work outside academia after graduation. So beyond the professional expectations of academics to have industry connections, especially when it comes to collaborative research and to grant applications, that's one side of why you should do a HDR internship. And this statistic that around 60% of PhD graduates will find work outside of academia, that's the other statistic. And I guess the other side of why it's so valuable for you to undertake a HDR internship during your candidature. And around 40% of PhD graduates will have careers in academia, and only about 3% will actually move on to the professorial level. but there is such an increasing focus on innovation and development in industry. And we've really seen this at an Australian government level, where they've introduced a number of initiatives to try and connect research students with industry. And so your advanced skills are very much needed in industry. And the ACOLA report, the Australian Council of Learned Academics report quote that I've got on the screen here, HDR training must not be seen as an academic apprenticeship, but as a highest level of university education, the outcomes of which can be applied across a range of different careers. This quote is so essential. And I know that you might be looking at the quote going, yeah, but Susan, that's from a 2016 report. And I will make mention that there really has not been another report since this one that has surpassed it. It is still very much seminal in the potential career outcomes for HDR students post-graduation. But there's this report, but there's also other reports that really talk about the needs of the future workforce and the skills shortage and transferable research skills. So these are things that HDR students have in abundance and are very much needed in industry. So we really encourage you to see yourself as a well-rounded researcher that can then apply their skill set to a range of different careers. And undertaking industry engagement activities will really set you up for the future, irrespective of whether you're interested in working in academia or industry after graduation. Now, let's have a look at a couple of stats before we move on. So these figures come from the post-COVID impact report. And figure 1 reveals the impact of the pandemic and the recovery on advertisements for academic positions within the higher education sector. So you can see that in 2019, there was a monthly average of about 1,000 academic jobs advertised. And by December 2021, post-pandemic, this number had reduced to approximately 800 positions per month. Then in contrast to that, figure 2 shows a monthly average of 15,000 non-academic research job advertisements in 2019. And then the peaks and troughs of the pandemic happened, and then the average remains about the same at the end of 2021. So setting aside the differences of monthly averages, these two graphs also demonstrate that there is that much greater demand for non-academic research jobs. And so we really encourage you to broaden your field of vision to consider positions after graduation, both in academia and in industry. And in order to do that, to be able to develop your industry engagement skills, which are so essential and so crucial while you are here during candidature, and using your time effectively to maximize your opportunity to progress into either of those pathways. Okay, so that's a little bit about why and the benefits of undertaking a HDR internship, but let's get into what a HDR internship actually is. And I'll preface this by saying that all HDR internships are so unique and they're so bespoke, and each one really is its own project. And we'll hear from Mo a little bit later about his experience, and you'll see how different it was to the experience that Sarah had in the video that we just watched. But generally, a HDR internship, it's a short-term and clearly defined project that's with and or for industry. And Gred, myself and Simon and Catherine, we administer and facilitate the internship project agreement. So they do need to come through our team for them to be approved. The project is between you as the HDR student, the academic mentor, and the industry partner. Now, I'll talk a little bit about what an academic mentor is in the next slide. So the HDR internship project, it's separate from your thesis research, but ideally, we would love if it was relevant to your thesis, to your area of research. It doesn't need to be an exact match. And I'll give you an example. We had a student who was working on antimicrobial coatings that were applied to people's dentures or to fake teeth. What's the word I'm looking for? anyway, I think you know what I mean, implants in the mouth. And she was able to translate and to transfer her knowledge from her research area to undertake a HDR internship project with an industry partner who was in the food industry. And they were looking at incorporating antimicrobial coatings into floor surfaces. So you can see it's a completely different industry and different sector, but her research area was highly relevant to what they were trying to achieve. So we encourage you to think about different applicabilities for your research skill set in that way when you're looking for internship projects. So the industry partner, they own the IP of just your HDR internship project, and it could be a standalone project, or it could be with an industry partner which has a larger collaboration or a larger grant that's already happening at QUT. So for example, we've had some students in the Faculty of Engineering that have plugged into a larger grant, a larger collaboration with Transport and Main Roads and also Brisbane City Council. And so they're doing different 3 to 6 month sections of a much larger project. So that's an option for you as well. The internships are somewhere between 3 to 6 months in length. And when you do that, we move you from your thesis unit into the HDR internship shell unit. So this means that your candidature clock is paused. And then at the completion of the internship, we work with the Graduate Research Centre and they move back all of your milestones by the duration of the internship. So if your internship has been 3 months in length, your milestones get moved back by 3 months. So you're enrolled in IFN 004 for the duration of the internship. So you still remain actively enrolled as a QT student throughout the internship. And your scholarship is also paused, but we ask industry partners to provide funding for the internship experience. So the base rate, the minimum rate, is $10,000 for a 3-month internship. The student receives $9,000 of that, which is then provided to them as a fortnightly stipend in lieu of their scholarship being paused. And then the academic mentor receives that last $1,000 in recognition of their support of the internship project. You can also see on the screen here, I've got a little table which tells you the eligibility criteria that you need to meet to be able to undertake a HDR internship. So you'll see that what they all have in common, what all 4 of those degrees have in common, is completion of 6 months full-time equivalent of your degree. And then for IF 49 students, it's also successful completion of stage 2. For IF 80 and KK 59 students, it's also successful completion of the research project proposal. And then for ED 11 students, it's also completion of the work in progress doc. So I mentioned I would speak a little more about academic mentors, and this is an opportunity for you to know that you will have an academic mentor on your internship project, but it doesn't have to be your supervisor, your HDR supervisor. It could be another QUT academic staff member who has expertise relevant to the HDR internship project that you're undertaking. And some students actually prefer to choose a separate QUT academic staff member rather than their supervisor, because that in itself is a really great networking experience. So just something for you to think about. And the academic mentor, they assist with developing and also vetting the project for suitability. We want to set you up for success and make sure that the proposed internship activities are feasible and reasonable for you to complete within the time frame. And as I mentioned, the academic mentor position is incentivized because they'll receive a minimum of $1,000 into their research account at the completion of the internship. So how to secure an internship? Well, there are 2 main ways that you can go about this. So myself and my colleagues, Simon and Catherine, we undertake some business development activities with industry partners where we are working with them to develop HDR internship projects. And once we have these, we then advertise them on the internal HiQ website. So you can go to that website and see what internships through the QT HDR internship program are available for you to apply for. On that same website, we also work with a HDR internship third-party provider, HDR Intern, and you'll see HDR internship opportunities from them that you can also apply for. But then we might also have some external programs, such as the Nicolas Baudin program, which are internships in France, or the STEM Policy Graduate Internship Program. And so you'll see different opportunities at different points of the year advertised there, and you're welcome to apply for all of them, provided that you meet the eligibility criteria that I just discussed for your relevant degree. The second option, and I think the more empowering option, is to self-source your own internship. And we have a different workshop called Self-Sourcing a HDR Internship that you're very welcome to come along to. And we provide you with a proven model of how to successfully self-source your own internship, where you identify potential internship industry partners from your contacts or your network of contacts through your supervisor, for instance. We then have a suggested way that you can establish a relationship with that industry partner before pitching an internship with them. So that's really key when you're self-sourcing. If you get on the phone and you're cold calling industry partners, I can guarantee you 99% of the time the answer will be no. It's really important to establish a relationship with the partner first, and we have a way that you can do that through our self-sourcing and internship workshop. And that way they get to know you, they get to see the value that you could bring to their organization, and they feel more comfortable with the thought of you coming in to undertake an internship. So feel free to come along to one of those sessions in the future. Now, this is just a very quick overview of the HDR internship process, and I've got two different slides. This is the second one for self-sourcing. So let's just start with this one, which is if you are applying for a HDR internship that's advertised on the HiQ site. So you would apply for it. We then do our internal eligibility checks to make sure that you meet the requirements. Then you are shortlisted for an interview with the industry partner, and you participate in finalizing the internship agreement that GRED develop and facilitate. We then have some internship pre-requirements that you need to complete. These take roughly about an hour or so, and we can send you all the links for those before you commence your internship. Exciting moment. During the internship, because you are in a shell unit, we do have two pieces of assessment that you need to complete, which are the mid and the final internship presentations. And I'll talk about those a little bit later in a moment. Then there's a couple of post-internship requirements that you need to complete once you have finished your internship experience. We love for you to complete a post-internship survey, which you need to do in order to receive your HDR internship certificate, which is signed by the Senior Deputy Vice Chancellor of Research at QUT, Professor Christopher Barner-Kowalik. And this is something wonderful that you can then put on your CV. You can add it to your LinkedIn, and that is your evidence and your demonstration to future potential employers that you have used and applied your research skill set in the real world. So that's if you're applying for a HDR internship experience that we have advertised online. And now let's have a look at how it differs when you're self-sourcing. So the first step that you would undertake is to identify a potential industry partner. And again, we have a suggested and proven model of how you can do this that we speak about in our self-sourcing HDR internship workshop. So please come along to that for more info. Second, you would then form a relationship with the industry partner. And again, we have a suggested and a proven way on how you can do that. And then you would pitch the internship to them. Then you participate in finalizing the internship agreement, and everything else remains the same as you saw in the process of when you're applying for a HDR internship that's been advertised online. So this slide is to tell you about the self-sourcing and internship workshop, and apologies, I haven't updated it with the 2023 dates, but I will do that before I send out the slides to you this afternoon. And we will be kicking off our sessions again in February next year. So you're very welcome to have a look, or feel free to send us an email and I can provide you with the details of that. And also there is more information online on the HiQ site on how to self-source an internship with template emails and industry partner information. So I'd recommend that you have a look at that as well. And then if you're in a position where you're thinking, oh, I don't think I know anyone, I don't think I have any industry partner contacts, and you're thinking, oh, I really need to do some networking to put myself in a position to have industry partner contacts, I would recommend that you undertake some of the modules from the Employ Your Ability resources that are available and free to all QUT students. There are some amazing resources here. So connections, opening doors, strengthening your connections, or so tell me about yourself. These are all modules that you can undertake for free. And what a great 2023 goal to set for yourself, to do some networking and to broaden and expand your network so that you can include some industry partner connections in there. Now, the internship presentations, this is what I was talking about as the assessment pieces throughout the internship experience. So you do a mid and a final internship presentation. And these are really valuable because they're modeled off real world research consultancy experience. So in the mid, you bring together your industry supervisor, your academic mentor, and a member of the GRED team, and update everyone on what you've been working on so far, any of the successes and challenges that you've had, and also what's yet to come for the second half of your internship. And then the final internship presentation, again, it's updating everyone what you've been done, successes and challenges, and then any handover notes that you might need to provide for the industry partner. So both of them are roughly about 30 minutes. We do them online, but just to give you a heads up that that is one of the requirements of the HDR internship program. And then once you have completed your internship and you have completed your post-internship survey, we then recognize you with this fabulous completion certificate. And as I mentioned, you're very welcome to include it in your CV. We've got a number of students who I've seen, they've shared it on LinkedIn as a part of their referencing of them having undertaken the internship. And so it's a fabulous thing to have up your sleeve to show to potential employers in the future. Now, that is a whole lot of talking from me. And now I would very love to introduce you to our guest speaker, Mo Faramajian Rojani, who has just completed his HDR internship with the QUT BMW Design Academy. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and Mo, you're very welcome to share yours, and I can't wait to hear your presentation. Take it away.
Hi, Suzanne, and hi, all HDR students. Welcome. So I am excited to share my story with you so that you can kind of get a better idea of what to expect before and after your internship. So first of all, I'd like to say that do keep records of what you do, and something to show people your skills, to kind of present yourself, because people wouldn't have any idea who you are and you want something to show them. So basically my internship, I think most of you either have an industry background and now you're doing a PhD, or you're doing a PhD now without an industry background. Both ways, your PhD is such a unique avenue into industry that what you did before the PhD is going to be very different to what you're going to do after the PhD, I believe. And that's because of the expertise you've gained. And most of us PhD students, we are growing in a vacuum and we don't know how much we've grown. And the internship, apart from what Suzanne said, is a great opportunity for you to like kind of witness where you stand within the industry as well. Because the moment you go in there, you start to understand what the industry is doing and what you are capable of doing as well. So it's a very good way to gauge where you stand and what you need to work on in the future. So when you finish your PhD, you know you can get a job or you can go into one industry and so on and so forth. So for me, I was very, I'm a multidisciplinary student. So I came from a film animation background and now in Cars Q, basically with road safety. And I'm applying these novel visual things like augmented reality, to gain road safety within cars. So we had a brainstorming session with Suzanne thinking, okay, where do I go from here? I don't want to go into road safety. I want to go into designing interfaces for things and cars and things like that. And we had a little talk of how to kind of engage people like that, because the internships that were available to me were very different to what I wanted and to my expertise as well. So here's something to note as well. At the time, I applied or got in touch with multiple industries, multiple companies, and they are very slow to respond. So you keep contacting them and you're like, oh, why don't they answer? And then suddenly all of them answer at the same time and they all want you. So you're in a position where you're like, okay, I can now choose which one I want. So that's sometimes a great boost to your morale as well, to kind of understand, how much are you needed within your industry as well. So I decided to go with the BMW Design Academy. What I was saying about having something to show, have a website right now, sites.google.com, free. You can host your own website, write down what you have, your achievements, your work about on any project, to kind of, for the industry partners to kind of see what your capabilities are, what you can do. So when I got into the internship, I kind of proposed a project thinking, again, just like doing a PhD, I would be doing it in a vacuum. But I was very surprised that working with this team, working in a very talented team, actually, it kind of adds to your project as well, kind of guides you towards, learning more new tools and kind of upgrade yourself as well within the team. And it's not always just work as well. We also have we went out on a trip. You can build really good relationship with people you work with as well, and build a very substantial network, because there are great people out there who are working in the industry as well as academia. Working within the internship, I set myself some goals, and I chose a mentor that was not in my faculty, but in another faculty, in the industrial design faculty, because I liked his work. I like what my mentor did and where his position was within his industry. And I thought he could really guide me into moving towards where he is. And that is exactly what happened. We had talks, and he was very helpful to me. Going forward, the project is lots of fun. You get to use the newest tools and work on great projects. We also, I'll just jump to the end here, where we had a presentation of the launch of a BMW product, which me and the team designed a augmented reality application for the launch event. And we got to show everybody, and everybody was happy. Which these are basically tests and kind of applicable projects that can come from a PhD, because they're cutting edge and be applied to a commercial process like this. So things like this really told me where my knowledge stands within the industry as well, because when I'm doing my PhD, I'm like, I'm not really caught up with all the technology and things like that. And working with talented team, I thought, wow, okay, I have something new to bring to the industry that the industry doesn't have. The industry mostly has very good technical knowledge and things like that. But when you bring in theory, you no longer sit down and do the work, but you kind of add to the team's knowledge as well of how they could do things and kind of, really help out as well as also be able to learn a lot yourself. Within this PhD, I got to really build a good relationship with the people I worked with, and the boss there, and we still keep in touch, and we still talk about future of projects and things like that. But understand that when you're doing an internship, these relationships are one of the most important things, because they just branch out and connect to more people. Two is that you realize that you can actually finish a project and really impress as well. This was something I wasn't aware of. I was like, okay, how do the companies here work? Especially as an international student, I have no idea what the geography of the industry in my skill set is. So for me to get into it and kind of see where the skills are at, it gives me confidence that I can do it, or if I don't have the necessary skills, I can now work on it before I actually finish my PhD. So this project was actually a part of my PhD as well, because I'm trying to use augmented reality. So it really helped me actually to kind of learn the new cutting edge technologies that are used to then apply to my PhD as well. So it's a very good kind of interactive experience that helps your PhD, and you're helping a company, you're building relationships and everything. And I'd really like to thank Red because throughout this whole process, I was always talking with Suzanne, and she's been very patient with me, sending emails. Oh, I don't understand this, and she really caught me up to it, because it can be overwhelming, as every one of your PhDs is very unique path. My PhD experience is very different to just the person that works on the desk next to me. So it's not like your bachelor's where you all have the same experience. Everyone's experience is very different. And I really encourage you to reach out and talk to them as well. For finding the companies, it's really good to start building some relationships outside of your PhD as well. By, for example, your confirmations, you can choose panel members that are not from QUT, that you can choose panel members from CSIRO or different companies as well, to invite them and have them in your presentations. Keeping in touch with them by always recording what you do, sending it, whether it's on LinkedIn or Twitter or whatever it is, to keep them updated, to keep them remembering you and how you're learning and improving. So keeping these relationships alive, I think, helps out a lot, even though it can be overwhelming doing your PhD and doing all this at the same time. But that's how you grow. And if there is anything else, please ask questions at the end of the session. I'm glad to help out or share any experiences that I've had.
Thank you so much, Mo. That was a fantastic presentation, and I think that you covered so many important aspects there on how an internship experience can really inform your PhD as well, and how valuable it is to have a strategy to maintain those connections as well that you formed through the internship experience. One thing I wanted to say to all of the other students here is that Mo seem to get the gold standard of internship, and not everyone goes on a trip. I remember sitting in his mid internship presentation thinking, you got a trip? That's incredible. So don't expect one, but yes, if they offer you one, of course, say yes, and it will be a great learning and networking opportunity. And Mo, you also touched on how important the internships are for international students as well. And I just wondered if you had any other advice specific to international students that maybe you could share about internships?
Oh, sure. So for international students, for me specifically, I was not sure how things are done in Australia or how I'm supposed to, because like every culturally, the industries are very different. And here, with your help, of course, we got to get in touch and really talk to them as well, and really talk about their expectations of what I will accomplish in my PhD as well. So it is very important to communicate that what you can do, and how does that affect them as well. So a lot of times they're like, okay, you're an international student, they have concerns because of visa or whatever it is. They just want to be sure. And Suzanne is very learned in that area, and we just got the paperwork done, and they were like, okay, this is very easy, and we just went through it just like that. Other than that, you learn a lot of the work ethics and things like that in Australia as well. That is very useful, because in your future endeavors, you will know exactly what to expect as well.
That's such great advice. Thank you. And Mo has very kindly said that he will stick around to the end of the workshop. So if you do have any questions that you would like to ask, feel free to pop them in the chat, and then we can come back to them in the Q&A session at the end of the workshop. Mo, I'll just ask if you don't mind to stop sharing your screen as well. And I'll head back to my presentation. Here we go. Hopefully you can all see that. And so let's move on to, now you've had this wonderful overview of why you should do a HDR internship, the process, whether you're applying for one or you're self-sourcing one. And you've heard from Mo and also from Sarah about their different internship experiences. And now let's look at taking some action steps. So applying. And if you are applying for an internship that's listed on HiQ, we have a really fabulous resource called Nailing Your HDR Internship Application that we recommend that you review. It comes in either video format or as a PDF guide. And I really encourage you to do this because HDR internships are incredibly competitive. And sometimes it comes down to just little things that maybe one HDR student has an edge over another. And so I really encourage you to think about your HDR internship application like a job application, treat it with that level of seriousness and that level of meticulousness that you need to review it before you submit. So that resource is available for you, and I really recommend that you consult it. And then let's talk about interviewing for an advertised internship. So once you've submitted your application and we've done the eligibility checks, we send the applications to the industry partner, and they will shortlist students who they would like to interview for the internship project based on their applications. And then the interview itself, it can vary. I would say the overwhelming majority of them are conducted on Zoom or on Teams. Occasionally they're done in person, just depending on the specific industry partner and their workplace culture. So there's also, I wanted to make mention here within GRED, we have a careers educator, Miss Karen Carbu, who runs a workshop called Career Competitive Interview Strategies. It's only hosted in August each year, so it's already passed for this year, but you'll be able to jump into that session for 2023. And if you would like the resources early, you can also visit the GRED Blackboard site and search through the Careers Educator workshops, have a look for Career Competitive Interview Strategies, and you'll be able to find the resources there. And then I wanted to go through some very basic internship interview tips and tricks. Now, some of these might sound very obvious, but bear in mind that I have put this together based on my experience of sitting in on many HDR internship interviews. And my first tip is please join the Zoom early. It's very respectful to be on time and early. And please make sure that you have adequate lighting for your Zoom interview. In any interview situation, you are looking to build rapport with your interviewers, if there's plural, in a very quick amount of time. And so if they're not able to see you, that inhibits the rapport that you can build. Also organize to be in a quiet location. There's nothing worse than, being in a cafe with like numbers of orders being called out behind you. It's very distracting. And again, it's very difficult for your interview panel to be able to build rapport with you when they're frustrated and overwhelmed by noise in the background. Please dress professionally. And if you're on Zoom, just at least dress professionally from the waist up. It's always nice to have a collared shirt. You don't have to go, the full sort of corporate attire, but something professional, and you can have your tracksuit pants or your board shorts on underneath if you're on Zoom. But yes, definitely dress to impress. And then body language on Zoom. Now, I hope that I have been a positive example of good use of body language on Zoom during this workshop today. So having good posture, sitting up in a posture of excellence is always going to be more empowering for you rather than, say, a rounded slouched, which can feel quite closed off, and it also sends closed off signals to the people who are watching you, and also lots of smiles and hand gestures. Again, hand gestures are very personable, and smiles to be able to build rapport. Now, if you've not spent a lot of time having meetings on Zoom or delivering presentations on Zoom, it can feel a little bit weird to be smiling at an inanimate object, looking at a camera and smiling at it. So my pro tip for you is, as you get started, have someone in mind that makes you smile. When I first came into my previous position and I needed to deliver workshops for students online, I was really not used to speaking directly to camera, and I just think of my niece because she's 8, she's silly, she's playful, she's fun, and she always brings a smile to my face. So if you're thinking, I don't know how to speak to a camera, think of someone when you look at the camera that brings a smile to your face, and it will translate well to your audience. Speak up and give concise answers. Now, this is particularly about when you're discussing your research topic with an industry partner. If you have a half-hour interview, it would be advisable to speak for no longer than 2 or 3 minutes maximum about your research topic. And I have had students in the past speak for 15 to 20 minutes of a half-an-hour interview about their research topic. I understand that your topic is wildly fascinating and it's your comfort zone, and you really do need to let the industry partner have an opportunity to ask you questions and to know how what you are currently doing in your field of research, how that then translates to outcomes for them in the research, in the internship project. So err on the side of giving more concise answers so that you are giving your interviewers the opportunity to ask you questions. And be confident. One thing that I can honestly say after working with hundreds of HDR students and seeing them interview is that often HDR students have this sort of feeling of imposter syndrome or somehow that they're not good enough. And believe me, you are. You're amazingly skilled, and the skill set and the experience that you have from your HDR degree is incredible. So really just know that, wear that with pride, and go into your interview confidently. You are all wonderfully amazing in your own unique ways. And here are a few. I won't go through all of these because some of them are quite similar, but I did ask our careers educator to put together her top tips and tricks for interviewing successfully as well. So as I mentioned before, I'll be sending out all of the slides and the resources either later today or tomorrow, and you'll be able to have access to this slide to prep for your HDR internship interview. But I will say one of the final points is to say thank you and to clarify the next steps with a smile. And I think that that's always a really lovely way to end an interview. So in your interview, also bearing in mind that you need to know what the industry partner wants so that you can speak to that and address what they're looking for. So we recommend that you look carefully at the advertised internship opportunity because there's a lot of keywords and there's a lot of description in there, which will tell you exactly what they're looking for. And then take it that next step, learn the language that the industry partner has used in that expression of interest for the internship project and describe the competencies that they look for. So learn that language and use it back to them. And then we recommend utilizing what's called the STAR method. So S for situation, T for task, A for action, and R for result. So let's give you an on-the-fly example of that. So say I was being interviewed and somebody said to me, Susan, can you tell us about your student engagement experience? And I could say, well, you know, in my current position in grad, I deliver workshops for HDR students regularly on the topic of HDR internships, self-sourcing an internship. And I'm really confident in my communication and my presentation skill sets. And I know that this is translating well because after I deliver the workshops, I then survey the students and I have a 91% satisfaction rating from students. So I know that I'm delivering the information well, I'm able to be understood. And so the result is that students are familiar with the information and they feel confident to go out and apply it. And that's evidence of the strength of my communication and presentation skills. That was just a on-the-fly example for you of how you would use the STAR method. And QUT also has a really fabulous resource called Big Interview. The link is there. I recommend that you go and check it out. If you have not interviewed for a while or at all, you can actually go and practice your interviewing. So I definitely recommend that. My last point is to refine and improve as you go. And, you know, I've certainly seen HDR students apply for a particular internship opportunity, and for whatever reason, they're not successful, and then they apply for future ones. And the difference, I'm thinking of one student in particular, and the difference between being successful was he took the feedback from myself and also the industry partner from that initial interview where he wasn't successful, and he took it as a learning opportunity. And I really believe that there's no such thing as failure, there's only feedback. And so if you're not successful, you know what, don't beat yourself up. It is what it is. See what you can learn from that experience and improve for your next one. And the second time he came back and interviewed, his skills were so much sharper. He absolutely nailed it and he was successful. So there's always other opportunities that you can go for. And my final tip or trick for successful HDR internship interviewing is know what you have that's relevant. And I've put them in order of priority here. So your relevant skills, that's top priority of what the industry partner want to know. So in Mo's instance where he was, you know, looking at augmented reality, AR, I think I got that acronym right, sorry, Mo. But the, you know, having come from that animation background, that was so highly relevant. So being able to talk about that and your relevant education. Sometimes you can look back at your undergraduate unit outlines and there could be some information in there that could be really useful for you to discuss in an interview. Relevant employment experience. This is so important. And I'm going to give you a real life example. I think it was end of last year, we had a HDR internship with the Queensland Art Gallery of Modern Art. And we had students from AI who were applying for the internship opportunity. Now, the student who was successful, one of the reasons that he was successful was because he was an international student, and in his home country in Mexico, he had actually worked previously at an art gallery. And so that was relevant because not only did he have the skills and the educational background that they were looking for, but they thought, oh, wow, this student comes with something unique. He's got that gallery experience. He understands the framework of the industry that we work within. And that was why they ultimately chose him. Then your research topic, and remember to speak concisely about that. And then prepare for the interview by making a short list of examples. So you can think back over your career and your education and pull out some of the highlights or some of the challenges. Make a short list of those examples. Think about them in the context of the STAR method: situation, task, action, result, and then have a practice of them on big interview, and then you'll be confident to discuss them in your actual internship. Now, if you're sitting there and thinking, well, Susan, that all sounds great, but I don't know what my strengths are, then I would recommend that you undertake a strengths character survey. This is one that we use in GRED, and we are in no way associated with them. We don't get any compensation or anything for promoting them. We just find it a particularly thorough one and a good one. And so I would recommend undertaking a character strengths survey so that you can go confidently into an interview and say, yes, I am an excellent communicator, or yes, I have excellent relationship building skills or analytical skills, as well as the technical skills that you have from your own discipline. You can also prepare for your interview and your internship through the ASIN modules. Again, these are free to all QUT students. ASIN stands for the Australian Collaboration Education Network, and also Big Interview that I've already spoken about. Mo made an excellent point that, especially for international students, understanding the Australian workplace culture is something that could be new to you. And so ASIN have a fantastic module on understanding workplace cultures that I would highly recommend any international student undertake. But also, if you're a student who has come from high school, your undergraduate, maybe you did a master's and then straight into your PhD, and you haven't had a lot of industry experience, this module would also be really valuable for you as well. Okay, that's a whole lot of information for you. So what I would like to do before we start into the Q&A session is just to give you some information on where to start. What are the action steps that you can take to start thinking about your HDR internship? And the first one is to read through the HDR internship page on HiQ. Submit your registration to the HDR Industry Engagement Program. And I'll talk a little bit more about that on the next slide. And also, you'll see in our weekly HDR internship newsletters that there's also a generic expression of interest on APR Intern, which is the third-party provider of HDR internships that QUT works with. And you can submit a general expression of interest to them as well. And I would really recommend that you do that, because we have had students pick up internships through APR Intern from submitting that generic application. Also, start a conversation with your supervisor. Let them know that you're interested in doing an internship. They may need to guide you that perhaps there's a more appropriate time in your candidature for you to do that. Perhaps you have some data collation or some lab work that needs to be undertaken, and so they might say, okay, great, but it would be better for you to do it at this particular point in time. So work with them. Also let them know that you're keen to leverage their network of contacts too. So if you're in the position of self-sourcing your own internship, that you would like their assistance to be able to connect you with prospective industry partners. I highly recommend that you participate in the self-sourcing and HDR internship workshop, which is different to the one that I'm delivering now. We have a proven and suggested model for you on how to effectively self-source an internship. And I would love to be able to share that with you, because you certainly, and I think Mo touched on this, you certainly don't want to be waiting around for an opportunity to present itself on the HiQ page. You also want to be out there connecting with the industry partners that you want to undertake an internship with, and to be connecting with them and to be having those discussions to progress a potential internship. Definitely read the GRED emails, and I have a slide coming up on what they look for, and apply for internships. As I said, even if you're not successful on the first go, that experience and having that mindset of learning from the experience for future internship applications will really set you up well. And then practice your interview skills on Big Interview. So that's a nice little set of New Year's resolutions that you could make for yourself on how you're going to start your HDR internship journey. And this is the HDR industry engagement registration form that I mentioned. Now, it does trigger an email with your supervisor. So 2 birds with 1 stone, you register for this, and then that starts a conversation with your supervisor as well. But the reason why it's so essential for you to register for the program is because occasionally we have industry partners who come to us and they'll say, we've got this project and we need a student in a week. We don't have enough time to advertise it. And so what we do is we go through the students who have registered for the HDR industry engagement program, and we look for who might have a suitable skill set or background. And then we reach out to you and say, hey, we have this potential internship. Would you be interested? So please make sure that you do this, because it is another way that you can find internships, and it really helps us as well when we have partners who need students very quickly. So I mentioned the GRED newsletters, and this is what they look like. So the HDR Matters is sent weekly on a Monday, and it has all of the upcoming workshops and offerings from GRED. So when we have our future self-sourcing and internship workshop, you'll be able to register through that. And then on a Tuesday, you'll see we send out these fabulous orange emails that has got the internship opportunities listed there. It also has the links to the HDR industry engagement program registration, and the link to the APR intern generic expression of interest, that I highly recommend you complete those 2 things today. And then to apply for advertised internships, we've got the whole, the range of opportunities are listed on our HiQ page. The instructions are on the HiQ page. And remember to have a look at that Nailing Your HDR Internship resource, either in video or PDF format, before you submit your application. So upcoming sessions will be back in 2023. This is actually our last workshop for 2022, but we'll be back, and there is a link that Ivy's either put in the chat, or it's in the resources that I'll be sending out either today or tomorrow, which has got the full range of training. But we'll be back in February next year with more workshops. And in the meantime, if you think I can't wait until then, I need to speak to someone more urgently, just send us an email, and I'll give you our email address on the last slide, because we're more than happy to set up a Zoom or a phone call with you, just like I did with Mo, and we can talk through your individual circumstance and help you from there. So before we head into the Q&A session, Ivy has put a link into the chat, thank you, of a very quick survey that I would love for you to complete. It's 1 minute, it's anonymous, and as I said, we're always looking at making the sessions even better. So I would love for you to complete that and let us know what you think. And while you're doing that, let me give you a little bit more information on another industry engagement opportunity that we have, which is a HDR Design Sprint. It is a 1-week intensive program. with part-time work required pre and post sprint, and HDR students, they lead sprint teams grouped together around the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs. So I've got the dates on the screen of when the pre-sprint, the design sprint, and the post-sprint are happening. So it's only 1 week full-time and then a week of part-time on either side of that. And it is an amazing opportunity to unpack digital growth opportunities of the Sustainable Development Goals and seeking to shift the SDG narrative from corporate social responsibility to corporate social opportunity. Big reframe there. Now, this is very exclusive. There are only 40 places available for HDR students, and when you participate, you receive a $500 stipend. So the link is on the screen there. I recommend that you submit your application for it. My colleague Simon is managing the design sprint. He's doing an amazing job. He's had an enormous amount of interest from students for the design sprint, but there are a few places left. So please, 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 if you want to participate, get your application in as soon as possible, because it is a really amazing opportunity. And it's the first time that we've run a design sprint of this nature, which has got a whole range of industry partners that you'll be working with, a whole ecosystem of them. And jumping into the design sprint, getting to know those industry partners through the design sprint, that's more networking for you, and that's more prospective industry partners to potentially approach for internships after the design sprint. So submit your application. I'll also let you know that there's eGrad School that's offered through GRED, and there are some amazing online modules that you can take, and they're all free. All of these resources are free for QUT students. Other Australian university students have to pay for these, but because you're at QUT, you get them for free, which is just incredible. So from this list, I would recommend, I've had a look through the modules, and I think the ones that are most useful and applicable when you're thinking about undertaking a HDR internship are definitely the leadership and communication, and the project management, and the explore your career potential. They would be my top 3 for you to have a look at. So definitely connect with the eGrad School. Again, another great New Year's resolution to make for yourself, to undertake some additional preparation training for your HDR internship. So that brings us to the end of the workshop. I have our email address on the screen, which is hdr.intern@qut.edu.au. And if you have any questions, or as I said, if you can't wait for the workshops next year, you're just so welcome to send us an email. We're all very friendly people. We're happy to help you. So send us an email and we'll connect and chat about your individual circumstance. But for now, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And if you have any questions for either myself or for Mo is still here, please feel free to either turn your camera and your mic on, or you can pop your questions into the chat. But bear in mind that turning your camera and your mic on is a great way to improve your communication skills today. So the challenge is there for you to communicate in that way. And I'm just having a quick look through the chat to make sure that I haven't missed any comments. And also, I'll just say, for anyone who hasn't entered their student ID number into the chat, if you could please do that now, that would be great. Chamilka had a question about sending the resources, but I've answered that, and I said that I'll be sending them out later today or tomorrow. Thank you, Desi, for entering your student ID number. And if anyone else could do that who hasn't done that already, that would be great. And last opportunity for questions today, either to myself or the wonderful Mo. Mo, while we're waiting for any questions to come through, did you have any last tips or tricks or final advice or anything else that you would like to share with everyone?
Oh yeah. One thing I'd like to remind people is that the best time to do your internship would be in your second year. So after you've done your confirmation seminar, to go into an internship, it's so good because at that time you're basically designing your studies, you're going through your methodology and your data collection methods and things like that. And it's a really good break from all the the literature review you've done, and to kind of go into the industry and come back with fresh eyes to look at your research. You can add so much to it. For me, it was like a reset. I went back into my research, I looked at things, and I was able to see it with fresh eyes. And it helped so much in writing and kind of coming up with better solutions and things like that. So it definitely does help to go through it on your second year. My second year was during COVID time, so for me, it got pushed a little further, but still, it was a great opportunity. And the good thing is that QUT, and thanks to Greg, the internship program is really well integrated into your PhD. So you'll basically be, taking the subject of an internship instead of like going on a leave and then coming back to your PhD. So it's very well integrated, and other universities don't do this the same way. So it's very good that QUT does this, and thanks, Suzanne, for making that opportunity possible.
That's a really good point, Mo. So I work with 33 other universities to talk about HDR internships, and I have to say the majority of them, students have to take a leave of absence. There's no funding from the internship partner, so students have to fund, obviously they're on a leave, so their scholarship is paused. They have to fund the time of their experience themselves, and it's really challenging. So we feel like we've got a good setup here at QUT where your candidature is paused, your scholarship is paused, but then we have the funding from the industry partner to sustain you throughout the internship experience. So that's great feedback that you feel like it's set up well. Okay, we've got something from Aurora in the chat. Not a question, but wanted to say thank you very much. Thank you, Aurora. I'm in the School of Creative Practice, Drama, Music. I came from creative industries. Love that. I'd love to use and apply my research skill set in advertising, copywriting, or marketing. This workshop was very informative. Hopefully I can find something within this realm in the future. I'm only at the beginning of my PhD journey, but I'm glad that I got to watch it today. Good tip to apply in second year. Awesome. That's so great, Aurora. And I would recommend, as a starting point, definitely have a chat to the academic staff that you're working with in your school, because I know that they have amazing connections in those spaces. And feel free to send me an email and I can point you towards some of the academic staff that I know would be great for you to approach. And also have a look at the self-sourcing and HDR internship resources on the GRED Blackboard website as well, because in that space, it's more likely that you will have to self-source your own opportunity rather than it coming from the GRED team, but that's fine. And it certainly can be done. So yeah, feel free to, send me an email if you need any other support or assistance, and I'll be so happy to help you. Great. Another question, very useful information. Thank you so much, Susan and Mo. You're so welcome. I'm glad everyone's found it informative today. And isn't it wonderful to have Mo here to have this firsthand experience so that you can see what an internship project looks like and the experience from the student perspective. So again, thank you so much for your time, Mo. Really appreciate it. All right, I'm going to give you all one more minute to add any other last questions into the chat. So one more minute, get those fingers typing if you have any last questions, and if not, then we'll call it a day. But you've got our email address, and I'm actually just going to pop that into the chat for you all now.
Oh, and for those who are in their first years, do get to know your supervisor's friends as well. It really helps out.
That's such a good tip. Yes. And I think the supervisors, they're really the first port of call. They're so important because they already have a lot of industry connections that are specific to your area of interest in your field. So definitely hit them up first. Okay, we don't have any other questions that have come through the chat, so we're going to end the workshop here, but I wanted to say thank you all so much for attending today. I'm really glad to hear that you found it useful and informative, and I wish you all a really happy and safe festive season over the end of 2022, and I really look forward to working with you and supporting you in your HDR internship journeys in 2023. And a very last thank you to Mo once again for your time and sharing your valuable experience. And also just a last thank you to Ivy, who has been so kind in dropping all of these very useful links into the chat for you as we go through. So thank you so much, everyone. All the best, take care, and we'll talk soon.